we have sound. You can start.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. So welcome also from my side. We will shortly look on to what's new in OCP 2.1 and also shortly on the roadmap. So maybe a few words to me, if this works. Okay. So, now perfect. Yeah, that's our agenda. Shortly, some words to introduction. Then, what are the new features for 2.1? I think that's the most interesting topic for you guys. Then, shortly looking on the roadmap we have currently in mind, could also change for sure. And then a short summary and the most important part, the Q&A session. So if you have any questions, you can already think about something there. Okay, yeah, my name is Jacob Betz. I'm the current chair of the technology working group. So we are the group designing and or developing the OCP standard and also white papers. Mainly, that's our main focus. My normal work is for Vector Informatik. It's a German-based company, and I'm their software developer. If you have any questions also afterwards, you can just drop me an email or write me on LinkedIn or whatever fits you best. So looking shortly on the history of OCPP, so you see there has been lots of work already been done in the past. So starting in 29 with the start of ELAT, that I think it was the first idea of having something similar to OCPP. And then as you see here, more and more versions, more and more features, more and more work to do was mainly done in the OCA and also in the technology working group. And as you see here, also the line that's mainly similar also to the members of the OCA. So as you see, also we are getting wider spread in the industry. And I don't have to tell you, but also the industry itself is growing rapidly. I think if you can lay above this line also the number of charging stations, it would also fit very well. So you see here, lots and more things are done, and this also means that there is lots of more features we have to support as OCPP, and that's what we are going also for 2.1. So also starting with back from OCP 1.6, that's obvious. Hopefully the protocol you all are familiar with. So there is a limited set for mainly the basic charging things you can do. Like there's that's mainly the feature profiles which are in OCP 1.6. So there's core profile consisting of all the, for example, the transaction and authorization mechanisms. And then we have smart charging, local auth list reservations, and firmware management. That's mainly the feature set of OCP 1.6. And then we're looking for 2.0.1, so a protocol published about 5 years after 1.6, something like this. You see here, we have lots of more features in there. So we have introduced with 2.0 the device model, one of the biggest or the bigger improvements. We have also natively support for ISO 15118-2. We also tackled the security thing and the display control. But if you compare the two versions of OCP, so OCP 1.6 and 2.0.1, so the two major versions we have now out, between these two was really evolution. So OCP 2.0 started, I would not say on the green field, but there was the possibility to get rid of certain things we did not like at that time. So we changed there really much. And on one hand, that's really nice because we could make it better, the protocol. But on the other hand, upgrading from 1.6 to 2.0.1 was not that seamless. So it was some effort you have to put into your implementation to be able to speak 2.0.1. So because of this, we thought we should do this better for 2.1. So we mainly did, or what we are currently doing, let's put it that way, is we are not revolutioning it again, the protocol, but we are now expanding it, making it slightly better, that you don't have to start from a low basis, but if you have already 2.0.1 implemented, then going for 2.1 will be a small step, except you want to implement all the new features, then of course you have to do this. But all the existing stuff will be not that changed that much. So I will shortly afterwards go a bit more into the details of the future, but shortly one slide about the handshake. So as intended, we are using the WebSocket handshake mechanism to find the matching protocol between both the charging station and the CSMS. And as you see here, if you have a CSMS which is able to speak OCP 2.1, but your charging station only is able to speak 2.01, then obviously they will both fall back on their common protocol, which is 2.01, which means you won't be able to use the new features which will be in 2.1. The same is mainly also true if the CSMS does not did not update yet. So only the charging station supports more, then you also will fall back onto the 2.01 schemas and also the 2.01 messages, and also obviously then the 2.01 feature set. And you will be, of course, able to use the new features and the new schemas, the new messages, if both of the communications partner supports the most recent version of OCPP. So then shortly one slide about the versioning scheme. So we will try it, it's not really finalized yet, but we are trying to make it a bit more understandable what we are currently doing. So we are setting a versioning scheme. So this will be valid for 2.1 and beyond. So unfortunately not for 2.01, but at least after this, after 2.1, we will stick to this scheme. And it's mainly, as you all know, for other software artifacts, they're using a similar approach, I would say. So you should be normally familiar. We have the first number, which is for the 2 branch, the 2, obviously, which is the major version. And this means inside of these major version, we try to stick as much as possible and to be backwards compatible as much as possible. And then you have the minor version. There it's like for 2.1, it's the 1 in this case. This will be increased every time we will release a new version with extended functionality. So like we're doing now for 2.1, this had extended functionality, so we'll increase this. And then we have also the revision number. That's the addition. Every time we'll see sometimes in the field that there are some flaws, maybe we did not describe it correctly. So it's mostly editorial changes, and we publish these with an errata. And from time to time, we put all the changes from the errata into the edition to make it a nice document, and that you don't have to like open hundreds of documents to find the latest current thing. So that's mainly for the versioning scheme here. So looking shortly onto the features we have now, or which most of them are already done. Some of them are still on the final debate, I would call it. So we are already on a good way. Some of the first features we tackled was the native support of the 15.8-20. I think you all heard of that. That ISO published, I think, 1 year ago, a new version of 15.8. So the protocol communicating between a vehicle and a charging station, and that changed for -20 some things. One big change was regarding certificates. So there could be more and longer certificates, and because of this, we also adapted our OCP messages to be able to now send these new certificates and also the longer certificates. That was one major change in -20. And also regarding smart charging, there was also changes made there. So for example, you can now set the power per phase. In -2 on the power for all phases was similar. And also for price level, there has also been changes to the -20. So we are also doing this in OCPP. Another huge improvement for -20 was the V2X support. It also existed in SHA-Demo, for example, but to put this on a completely new level, we designed a whole use case section for the bidirectional power transfer. So bidirectional means mainly that the car also can feed energy back into the grid or to your house. That's because of the NX. So there could be several applications using OCPP. Yeah, exactly. So the current V2X support in 2.1 will be compatible with 15.8 and -20, and also with SHA-Demo. To support all the things the car makers had thought of, we introduced there several new smart charging strategies. So, for example, there's the set point. So there are different varieties, so to say, from this one, but that's the most high level important one, to put it that way. So back in the days, this was only possible to have a limit, and the vehicle or the charging station tries to reach exactly this limit. And now you can also have a set point, which will mean that the charging station will try to reach a set point. But in case it's needed or it just happened, it's still okay to be a bit above the set points, as long as you still stay inside the limit. So that's mainly what's written here. Then we have the frequency support. That's mainly a nice one. So have here, on the graph, you see here that the power. Also on the on this line here, you have the frequency of the grid, and on this line here, you have the power. So this mainly means you can say to the charging station, also to the vehicle, please look on the frequency, and depending on the frequency of the grid, you can discharge or charge your battery. This is mainly done to support the frequency of the grid. As you all know, at least in Central Europe, we gain for 50 Hertz. And if there are some deviations, this means that either is too much power into the grid or too less. So the car can mainly help in improving the grid stability. And last but not least, there's also local load balancing newly introduced. That's mainly important for if you have also prosumers in your building, like photovoltaics, or maybe you have a wind farm near your offices, I don't know. Then you can mainly tell the EVSE, please don't consume, or consume only a little bit from the grid, and all the other has to come from photovoltaics. Or you can also say the charging station, the vehicle has to put in power into the building, so you're not consuming that much from the grid. And also what will be new is the DER support. And this is a relatively new topic. So there is the idea that the utility can set throughout the CSMS some specific parameters to match the grid settings, so to say. I think the last webinar was mainly about this topic, so I won't get too much into detail for this. But what we have in mind is now that the utility can somehow, to a certain way, control the behavior of the charging station, and with this also the behavior of the electric vehicle. Another big discussion point we have had was the better integration of energy management systems. We defined for this several EMS topologies, so it's not that easy to like just said, okay, there's only one and this has to fit all use cases. So we try to identify and then define several topologies. Mainly the idea is to give the local EMS, so the local energy management system, so a device which is on site, also combined with the charging station, the control over additional smart charging profiles. So I try to draw there a nice picture. So given the red one is the input, the power from the photovoltaics, and the blue one is that what you're going to consume from the grid. You can now say that the charging station and the vehicle charges like the green line. So you are able to not only charge with, like, let's say 10 kilowatts, but if sun is shining, you can even charge with a higher power. I already said we have designed several topologies, and you can, to a certain extent, boil them down to 3 different topologies. So there's either the possibility that the EMS controls the charging station directly, then there's somehow a communication to the charging station where like these power curves are sent to the charging station, and the charging station will then adapt. And there's also the possibility to have a local controller, so a device where the charging station are connected to, and the local controller will then send the new power profiles to the charging station, the new charging profiles. Or of course, there's also the possibility that the EMS and the local controller are, so to say, the same device, and then they will change the profiles. Okay, and then also a big important thing is the prepaid support. That's also pretty new that's new for 2.1. So back in the days, it was really hard to monitor on the charging station itself if certain limits are reached to then stop the energy transfer. So for this, we introduced 3 different possibilities. So it's cost, then you can, like, say, the charging station, if a certain number of money has reached, so to say, then the energy transfer will be stopped. The next one would be energy. So then you're saying, okay, the car, for example, can charge 30 kilowatts, and if it's reached, then also the charging session has to stop. And the third one is time based. So then you say like 1 hour, and after this, the session is over. So you can, with this new functionality, you can mainly give the possibility for the charging station to stop on one of these 3 methods, so to say. The session itself can be started remotely, so by your app or whatever fits best, or from the charging station itself. So then we also go shortly onto the local payment. One of that's still a bit under debate what the details are, but in general there is the need for some regulations to have the possibility to calculate the cost of a charging transaction on the charging station. So back in the days, or what's till then, normally what was done was the cost was in the back office calculated or at the EMSP. And now with this new feature, we are allowing that also the cost of the current transaction can be calculated at the charging stations. This is sometimes used for regulation reasons, that there's our regulators saying, okay, you have to show the current price and the current amount to the customer during transaction. It's also very beneficial for the prepaid transactions, especially if you want to stop on cost-based. Also could be used for the local credit card payment, where you have a credit card in your charging station and you don't want to let the communications through the back office, but rather treat it locally. And the idea is to make this effort as low as possible to align there with OCPP, so that the roaming protocol, that the EMSP can relatively easily set the price schedules, and the charging station will then adapt. And then I already spoke shortly about credit card or local payment terminals, and that's also a thing we are looking into it. And with this, also additional the multi-language support is added. So in 2.01, it was only possible to send one language or one message that shall be displayed to the customer. So for example, in English, but then your charging station is in Dutch or in the Netherlands, or if the person who is standing there doesn't understand Dutch, then it was not possible to switch between languages, and this will be now integrated into 2.1. So this is our current roadmap. It's still, I said it here, this really small disclaimer, so please don't take these times by heart. So they can still change, of course, depending on if we find serious bugs, or sometimes we're not finished like we at least try to finish. But that's our current timeline. So we'll try to finish all the still open task group end of this year, so we can integrate all the new feature into the draft 2. This is the green draft here. So end of 2023, it would be, hopefully we'll manage to put out a draft 2, which will contain all the additional features we're trying to implement and trying to support. And after this, we will start a longer review period, because that's not a small document, the 2.1 draft. So we need to review this and have also discussions if there are still missing things. But what I can already tell you is that the draft 2 will be that mature that you can already start with early implementations. And this would really help us if you want to start with the new features, because reading a document is hugely different than really trying to implement it. So getting from all you the feedback regarding implementation would be really beneficial. So if you still find there, maybe it's still only unclear, then we can still fix it later. It's not a big deal. But if we find there something which does not work like we expected, then the earliest implementations and the feedback of you would be very beneficial to fix it before we release it publicly. Also, the public release here meant that till we really publish this in Q3 next year, it will still remain in the OCA. So as a member, you are able to get the document. You can just download it from Courseway, but for all the external public, it will be only available when it's then finalized and published and reached a good goal that we can say, okay, we can publish it. Okay, looking shortly on the summary. So I think the most important thing you should take away from this presentation is that OCP 201 is the basis for 2.1. So if you have not started yet implementing 201, it's definitely the right time to do so, because 2.1 will rely on 201, and yeah, otherwise you will have a huge work to do when you then finally are able to go for 2.1. I don't have to tell you that the e-mobility market is still evolving. I think it's a relatively new market still, with lots of upcoming companies and lots of upcoming ideas. So we will always depend on new features for new OCP versions. So at least for the next years, I personally can't see that 2.1 will be the last OCP version. So there will be always new, and if you're not like adapting to the new OCP version, then there will at some point just so much work to do that it's definitely a better idea to start implementing it now. We have always the discussion about adding new features to all versions, but in the end it turns out that it's really hard to making the changes and still be compliant. So we'll not do this. So if you want to use new features, you have to also upgrade the OCP protocol. As I already said, 2.1 is already available for members. If you want to like the copy, then just reach out to us or contact Frank. We will be more than happy to provide the draft to you. And as I also said, please, if you have any feedback on regarding this, could be editorial, could be for features, then just let us know. We are more than happy to try to fix them, try to make the protocol better, but we need your help for this. So then I can mainly end my presentation with 2 things I would want to tell you. Please prepare already for 2.1, so make sure you are ready when we publish it, and also to be able to discuss with us, and also to get the latest drafts as early as possible. Consider joining the OCA if you did not have done this yet. I think it's very valuable and will help you in the implementation, and also us, of course, in implementing and designing the protocol. Okay, that's mainly my last slide. So now we can open the Q&A session. Are there any questions?
Well-deserved applause. I have online questions, but first I would give you the opportunity.
Yeah.
One moment, I have a small microphone for the people at home. You stand up and please state your name.
For the grid frequency response stuff, is that stored on the charge point and then reported to the backend when that occurs?
I'm not a really expert on this, I must say. So for the really hard expert questions, you have to ask Frank.
Okay, yeah.
So maybe you can just hand over.
For the frequency support, then this frequency curve is sent to the charging station. So it assumes that the charging station has a frequency meter. And then the charging station autonomously can react according to that curve. That's the only way it can be done fast enough.
Yeah, but like, so it would be nice to have a kind of a ledger of when that occurs, and then that way you can get reported back to the charge point management system. And then I guess sometimes you might have agreements with utility companies that if you do react to frequency responses, then you get some sort of like payout or something.
Yes, you know when it's going to happen, and there's also a message that tells the central system, okay, I'm now doing this. Yeah, and we also have different use cases. One use case is where you're only doing frequency control, so you're basically not charging the vehicle, you're just sitting there and you're ready to do frequency control. But there's also the really DER control for if you're just charging and discharging vehicles the normal way, but then something happens, some emergency on the grid, and you have to overrule it or something. So that's a slightly different use case, but you get the message then back to the central system that tells you, okay, this function is now taking over. Yeah.
So, but as I can tell you, if you are really interested, then please join. There's a V2X task group tackling especially these topics, and also going a lot more in depth than the short answer of Frank regarding, and hopefully we can answer their all questions. And if you miss something like this, then yeah, we'll try to fix it. So please.
Okay, anyone? Yep. Can you please stand up and tell me your name?
Rodrigo. I have one doubt about the prepaid, because when you are talking about roaming, OCPI, it's nice protocol, but sometimes we have delay in the accurate information of the price. So how can we be sure that we are not providing more energy or less energy that was prepaid?
Yeah, the idea is that at the start of the transaction, the cost mainly is, and also the tariff is sent to the charging station, which can then compute this locally. So there is no, if I understand the questions correctly, you're a bit concerned that there is a bit delay between the point of energy is reached and the EMSP will answer, right?
Yeah, my doubt is more because when in real life we have some delay between the information from the hub itself. So at the hub at this moment is like 40 cents the kilowatt hour, and then we start to charge, and after 5 minutes we found, oh, it's not 40, it's 50. So we already accept prepaid X amount for energy, for example. So there is a huge difference there in value.
Okay, but if this case occurs, you could also go for not for the energy amount, but also for the cost. So then you will say, okay, the user has like 10 euros or whatever, and send this to the charging station, and the charging station will make sure with the provided tariff that only the 10 euros will be reached. So there's no relying on real-time communication anymore. So till now it was exactly that case. The CSMS has to in real time, or the MSP has in real time to compute how much the charging station charged. But now we are making the other way around. We are enabling the charging station to compute the cost locally on the charging station. So and I think this would solve the problem in the future.
Oh, you want to add something? No?
I want to add something.
Oh, you want to add? Sorry. State your name.
Cor Melker, ChargePoint. This new prepaid feature that's in OCPP introduced now in 2.1. We still have to do the introduction into OCPI to make this possible that an MSP can forward the prepaid amount in kilowatts or in euros. So that will enable that. But first, yeah, you have to stack on top of that. So it's first to get the station aware of it, and then you have to provide the information from the MSP to the CPO via OCPI. So it's on the list, or the to-do list of OCPI to do this also. And then you can probably provide it when doing a real-time authorization, and the feedback, you get this kind of information back. That's the thoughts that are now living for these kind of things.
Okay, thank you. Online question by Jonas Forslund. Will a manufacturer have to support all features of 2.0.1 to claim that they support 2.1? For example, a smart face selection.
depends a bit on the feature, I would say. So there are some basic features defined in OCPP, and if you go for certification, I think that's rather a certification question. If you go for certification, you as a charging station manufacturer has to support certain features. So just a really dumb example, but you have to support authorization, and you have to support starting transaction and stopping transaction. So and that's the same for 201, and probably will also be the same for 21. So in summary, if you are certified for 201 with the core profile, for example, then you're probably the effort for getting the 21 certification is not that high. So they will tackle a similar feature set.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, Dimitri Doutrio. Why is there a need for installing the OEM root certificate in the charging station?
We already discussed this yesterday, right? Or the day before. So
It was in a technical working group.
yeah, it was in a
Yes.
technical working group. So the last 2 days we have had a face-to-face meeting, and that was also the question. As far as I remember correctly, and please guys correct me if I'm wrong, is it for the mutual TLS authentication for the vehicle? So if the vehicle can authenticate itself to the charging station using a certificate, and this certificate is derived from the OEM root certificate. So for this, you need it also in the charging station. And I see some knocking, so I'm not completely off, at least.
First level security, then go for the context.
Okay, it's nice to mention for all the OCA members to join the technical working groups. Okay, they can participate. Let's see, questions here? Yes. You stand up and state your name.
Hi, this is Jelle from EVBox. Really nice presentation, thanks.
Thanks.
I like the new smart charging feature, the local PV limit that you can combine with the limit from the CSMS. But since we see such a high need for this feature, and the roadmap is only being released, really end of next year, would it not be worth it to make a small addition on 2.01 to add this? I'm still going to ask it because I think we see a lot of custom implementations of this feature otherwise.
Yeah, so on one hand, you're right. So it would be a nice thought. I think the discussion at the end boils always down when to stop. And so we decided we won't add new features anymore to all protocols using white papers and what have you. But as EVBox is a member of the OCA, you can just download the draft 1, which is already available, containing all the V2X, or mainly all the V2X features, and also containing the local power limit. So then you can always start implementing this feature with 2.1 draft, so to say, and later then just make the changes for the final 2.1 release. Of course, you have also the other party has to do the same. But I think before implementing custom things there, it's much easier to take the current 2.1 draft, and also the schemas are available for this, start implementing this. And for us, it's also the good thing that we will get feedback from you if you missed something or if there's could be better described.
Okay, thank you. Gore is going to add something.
No, I think the V2X and the 1511A-20 changes was the main reason why we came to 2.1. Because we first tried to do it with all customization on 2.01, and it grew so much, it was so unreadable that was the moment that we decided, no, we make it 2.1. So that's the reason why.
No, exactly, but I think the PV is high need and the strength is a little.
Yeah, but that's true. But then what Jacob says, you can use the draft version to do it on your own installation with the CSMS and your charging stations, and then prepare yourself for the final release.
Just maybe one last remark, because if you're just implementing the 201 core with smart charging, for example, then the change to 2.1 is not so big. So I think if you would add customizations to support that, it would be making a real 2.1 with just core and smart charging would only be a little bit more of work. So I think it's definitely the better way to go.
Okay, we have a lot of questions coming in, but I hope we can answer them all. But otherwise, we will answer them through mail. I will share them with you, Jacob. Let's see which one of you. Yes. Please stand up and state your name.
Hi, I'm Rune from Monta. Talking about credit card payments and the upcoming F-year. I'm talking about white papers. You have the California pricing requirements for 1.6. But are you also going to implement things like, because now we see that a lot of the charge point manufacturers will have to integrate a payment terminal. So no longer it's only running costs, it's also the credit card details like the last 4 digits and whatnot. Is that already part of this, or is it?
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
So there's a special group. That's the, if I go back on my slides, it's the payment terminal group, like this here, OCPP and payments terminal group, and they're especially looking into how to integrate it into, and what details shall we transmit to the CSMS and what are not allowed because of GDPR issues and what have you. So there's a special group especially for this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone here? Yes. Please state your name.
Philip Yang from Korea Smart Grid Association, and I have the question about the local EMS. And now in Korea, already operated 1.6 to service in local EMS through the main server to via the local EMS. But now you already showed a slide on that. The slide on this to set that through the I don't know exactly the name, but snipping or not, I don't know. But the charging station to shooting the both sides or the main server and then the local EMS. Is it
you
right?
mean how the local how the EMS will communicate with the charging station? You mean?
Yeah, because in Korea, we are operating the local EMS through the main server.
Ah, got you.
Yeah, that's why how can you operate the local EMS to now to 2.1?
Okay, so yeah, so you can still do this the same in 2.1. You can still route the information from the local EMS to the CSMS, and from there to the charging station. This will still work in 2.1. But what we are now adding the possibility that the local EMS can directly speak with the charging station. And what we are mainly doing is we are adding an additional charging profile, which will just tell the charging station, you get a certain amount from the CSMS, and you can add or distract a certain amount of energy to it. So the local EMS is directly connected to the charging station, and as well to the CSMS. So the local charging station will get the information from 2 ways and combine them together, and that's the information it will present to the vehicle or it will just use.
Briefly said that to the charging station shooting on the CSMS and then local EMS, is it right? Shooting both sides?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the information from both the CSMS and the local EMS can be used. You don't have to. You can also use only one. It's also possible, but we enable it that you can use both information and combine them.
All right. So this way is the conflicted the message did not allow did not error or functioning the possible to the not supporting the like as the CS did not working on the like as the CSMS to shooting and then EMS shooting both sides is the how can it possible to the operating the who is the first or not?
It's not who's the first, but they are combined. So you're getting 2 inputs and the charging station will combine them. But I think the details are already described how this will be done in detail in there was the EMS task group, and they're like designed also a short paper on how this will be done, and the details will also be in the draft 2, Frank, draft 1? Okay, so they are already there. So if you are really interested in the real details, you can either read the document or maybe just contact Frank at lunch.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I will have another online question by Camille Latucek. Could we control voltage level in the local grid via V2G? It must include and be aware of UE NCRFG regulations. Maybe you can read with me. Network code. So.
It's network codes. Yeah.
Yep.
So we will definitely like empower the charging station to do so. I think all the details you have to read the drafts. I don't have it in my mind. So I think if you have really detailed questions, then it would be better to read the document, or if the document does not answer it all, then write an email to Frank or to info@openchargealliance.com, and we were more than happy to answer it in detail.
Okay, because that was a question also, where can we get the OCPP 2.1 draft? It's for members?
It's for members only, exactly. You can download it from Courseway. So you have to register to the technology working group on Courseway, and there the document is shared. But in case if you like do not find it, just drop us an email, and we're more than happy to point you to the correct document.
Okay, and Frank or Jacob?
Yeah, or info@opencharge
Or info@opencharge alliance. Yeah,
would also work, hopefully.
Yep. Okay. Do we know what percentage of systems in the world use 2.0.1?
Unfortunately not. So it's I mean, we can ask our members, and we already did, and we get at least an impression, and we know that it's getting more and more. For example, when I look for the attendees at the Plugfest, it's the first time on the Plugfest that we have more 2.0.1 testing teams than 1.6. So the number is definitely growing, but we don't have a way to measure actually what the percentage is, what protocols are the charging station using. And I think the most CPOs also won't tell us.
We have room for one more question. Hopefully the audience. No, then we'll proceed. Did you already think about a way to say as a user, I only want to charge if the price is lower than a maximum limit? Use case mainly with public AC slow chargers and flexible tariffs.
Out of my head, I can't tell you. I could imagine so, but maybe Frank, you know?
Frank knows everything.
Yeah, sure.
Well, for this type of use case does not really affect OCPP. It's something that's probably the UI of the charging station needs to support, or the app of the charging station operator needs to support. So maybe in the app you could specify, this is my price limit, and then the operator can send in kind of charging profile that will only start charging when the price is below that limit, for example. So it is possible with OCPP, but it's functionality that's either in the station or in the CSMS that need to be supported there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's already supported with 201 in this case. Yeah. So could already do this. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, everybody.
Welcome.
And we will close this session for now. In 15 minutes, we will give the stage to John Watts. He's already present. We will be talking about battery testing. 15 minutes here at 12 o'clock. So join us. I will end the session online. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much.